Hi, this is Robert Kiyosaki, and you're listening to Capital Hacking. This is the most important thing you can listen to today.
He's the one.
I have a dream.
With great power comes great responsibility.
I could do this all day.
This is it. Don't get scared now.
They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom.
Cinderella's story out of nowhere.
It's in the hole. That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Capital Hacking begins in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to the big show. Josh McCown here with the illustrious John Edwin. Hey, buddy.
Hey, Josh, we just had an awesome interview with Mr. Zach Bowles, and he is an interesting guy, isn't he?
Yeah, so if you're in the world of business, which I think if you're listening to the show, you are either probably an executive in your company or own a company or an investor. What is something that we don't want to talk about, but we enjoy learning? We enjoy knowing about insurance and about law. And we may not always find it fun, but we need to know about it because it changes the trajectory of our companies. And this is the episode for you.
Yeah, Zach really gets into how to protect yourself as a business owner, and something we didn't get into. So you don't want to tangle with Zach in the in the courtroom, but you also don't want to tangle with Zach outside of the courtroom because he's a big Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy.
Is he really?
Yeah, we didn't even get into that, but Zach was crushing it. He's got a consulting company that can also review your legal documents and contracts as well.
That's the biggest hack here. So if you're anywhere near business, which you probably are because you're listening to the show, he has an incredible backdoor hack about how you can really supercharge your own legal team without much cost. So you got to wait to hear about that and dark matter.
Let's go.
I should just say, John, this is the day we got Zach Bowles on. So I'm already excited here. So
no,
thank you for
if you're watching on video, Josh was ready to come in really, really strong, but he toned it down just a little bit.
It's the wrong
We have
time.
our friend Zach Bowles here. He's an amazing human being. We're going to get into all the legal stuff and consulting stuff that he does. But Zach, can you give us a little background on who you are?
Yeah, I appreciate it, fellas. I appreciate you having me on the show. Hello, everybody that's watching and listening. Thanks for your time today. Yeah, so my name is Zach Bowles. I'm an attorney with over a dozen years of experience, both in private practice and in-house for different companies. Right now, I manage litigation for a company that does $4 billion in business and has 30,000 employees worldwide. I'm a team of attorneys that basically we manage the risk as much as possible to make the bottom line continue to grow. Additionally, I have a consulting company where I help small to medium-sized businesses manage the risk. And mostly what that entails is just when you're signing a piece of paper, what does it mean? Make sure you know the risk, make sure you know the ramifications, because I always tell clients, $10,000 spent today will save you $500,000 down the road. And when you're focused on growth, that's super important to understand and pay attention to.
That was strong. Now, before Josh asks super detailed questions, I want to know why did you choose getting into law?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's actually a somewhat scary experience. When I was younger, I was with a group of friends that were pulled over by the police, and it's because they were racially profiled. They were looking for individuals that were 3 Hispanic males is what they looked for. And they pulled over my friends who were not Hispanic. They just happened to not be white. And the police proceeded to violate all of their rights. And it basically made me realize, I asked my dad after it happened, I said, Dad, I was so mad, I was angry, I was mad, I wanted to fight back. And he's like, look, fighting back with your fists and all that stuff would only get you in trouble. The way you fight back is to know your rights. And that's how you can help people out and you can educate them and stuff like that. My dad was a big believer in reading and education and arming your mind as well as your body. So that planted the seed that I just kind of grew later in life. And you can ask my mom, in 8th grade, I told her I'm going to be a lawyer, and she laughed, and then sure enough, it happened. So that brought me to the job.
And in your work today, I love what you said, you need somebody on your side when you're signing those documents. Those documents come fast and furious when you own a business. And they're in DocuSign all the time now, which thank God they're in DocuSign, but that encourages you to go faster.
Skip to the bottom.
Yeah. So any, if you want to dig deeper in that, so basically people, how do they use your service since we talked about it first? How do they use dark matter in connection to a regional lawyer they might have? Like they might have a general lawyer for their business, but Zach specializes in this kind of contract term negotiation.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great question. So If you use a regional lawyer or something like that at the bigger firm, they usually have their fixed style of business, right? A lot of people get that. They get comfortable, they get their niche, they kind of proceed with that. And that's good and bad. But the problem is if you only work with certain types of clientele, you fall into certain traps that you may not see because you're so used to it. And so if you bring in a new set of eyes, especially not just myself, but attorneys that have broken off in larger firms, they usually charge less, but you get the better work because we pay closer attention to what we're dealing with. Like, I know you, Josh, I know you, John, and if you ask me to do something, I'm going to value that opportunity a whole lot more than you're just a new case in the door at a large firm, right? And so you take that opportunity, you go through that DocuSign, you don't let your client skip to the last page and just sign. And instead you say, hey, these are 6 things I need 30 minutes of your time to make sure you understand before you sign this. And here's why. And a lot of times that not only builds dialogue, it builds trust, and it builds education. So the next time that this individual signs a contract, they don't need Zach's help. They're armed with it so they can immediately talk to the person across the table at arm's length and say, I'm not comfortable signing this, and here's why.
Yeah, but say you did do that. I mean, let's fast forward to one of these examples you've done in the past. You catch 3 really kind of mission critical, may damage the business long term, and you bring it to that executive's attention. And then what? They called their lawyer and say, negotiate better terms. I hate to say it, but it's almost like you kind of want a Zach Bowles to go call the other lawyer, but I think you're stuck, right? You won't.
Yeah, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But yeah, it's always like my idea is, how do I get you to yes? You want a yes, you want the deal done. How do we get there? And how do we get there but protect you at the same time? And so, I'm totally okay stepping in and talking to an individual and saying, and I've done that before, on the other side, I say, look, here's your guys' position, here's our position. I'm looking for a compromise. And usually that gets the quills down the other side, that I'm not coming in and swinging as hard as I can, because I don't care about my reputation. I want my client to win. And so to me, it's
right.
How do we get to where we both need to be so that both sides are happy? Because let's be honest, lawyers can muck it up real quick. And so I try to do the opposite of that and make sure I'm clearing the brush as opposed to creating it.
Hey everybody, it's Robert Helms, host of the Real Estate Guys radio program. And when you're not listening to our show, make sure you're tuned to Capital Hacking. You're going to dig it.
Oh, I love it. And in your journey, brother, you've done the big firms, it seems like, and you've done in-house. What a big difference from a lawyer's point of view of the two career paths.
When you are in-house, you have one client, and it's the company. And what a lot of people that I deal with often is they think, especially at the executive level, they think they are the client, when not, it's the entity. And so when the upper level, if a dispute happens, you have to be very careful to not, pick one person over another. And sometimes that can be an issue. But generally speaking, it's pretty easy because everyone in the room at the conference table wants to get to the same place. We're all just working together to row the boat the same direction. When you have private practice, you have, a roster of different clients, you have a roster of different problems, and everyone's the main character of their own story. And so they want their story told right now. And sometimes it's difficult to balance all that and keep people happy and, time management. But the good part is you get exposed to a lot of different areas, and it keeps life very interesting.
I agree.
I got to pivot back just a little bit because Josh jumps in and I just was like, I took a back seat for a second, but going back to your company, Dark Matter Consulting, can you give us an example of a client that you've had that you really helped that was in danger of signing a contract, and what did that look like, and how were you able to help them?
I appreciate the shout out to Dark Matter. So basically, when I first got involved with the company, it's a software company that is SaaS providing, right? So subscription as a service. And when I first looked at their contracts, they did not have there's a thing in a lot of contracts between vendors called limitations of liability. And that's a fancy way of saying we're trying to limit the amount of damages if we get sued or we screw up, right? And in this case, they did not have a cap on anything. And so what I had to explain to them, look, we can insert language in here that lets you as a business project if something goes south, worst case scenario, this is the amount that we're facing. And what that allowed them to do is not only plan from a business perspective, it allowed them to go to their insurance broker and say, hey, this is what we're doing. Can we get a coverage in this amount? And now they're across the board. They've insulated themselves very well if something does go bad. And so from that, it was kind of a building block of moving back. Okay, we've done it for this section. Let's do it for this section. And slowly but surely, you just kind of protect them. Another one I had was another company that was an online company. And when I first came to them, they had no employee handbook. They had no employment agreements. They had no NDAs. They had a lot of stuff going on. I'm like, you guys need to protect yourself, because they hired younger people that were salespeople, right? Their first jobs out of college. They're hungry, but they also, they make mistakes.
Yep.
And so it's kind of one of those things where you just coach them on experience, because, the reason I came up with dark matter is I like to say we see the unseen. And that's because it's based on experience of, we know what's down the pipeline. And as a business owner, I hope you never face that. But if you do, here's the best way to protect yourselves looking forward.
I love that your industry exists, your niche exists of legal consulting rather than legal representation. But John, I don't want to step on you, buddy. I feel terrible. I did something there.
Another one, and I'm going to pass it back to you in a second, Josh, but another one I was going to ask you, Zach, is you said that you've been an attorney for over 12 years. I'm guessing maybe even longer. What different areas of law have you, practiced?
Oh, yeah. Wow. Let's see. Let's check the memory bank on this one. So I've done a lot of litigation, and then later in my career, I moved to transactional, which means non-litigation. And the reason I find that beneficial is the old saying in law is litigators are called in when things go south. And that's usually the people that draft the contracts, and then they turn to litigators. Okay, it's screwed up. Now, can you guys solve it? So now I've seen when parties argue, what are they arguing over, whether that's before they sue each other or after they sue each other. And so now on the transactional side, it helps me spot issues in contracts. Like, this is going to be a problem. This is going to be a problem, because I always tell clients the contract isn't for when things are good. It's when things are bad, because everyone sings Kumbaya. It doesn't matter what the contract says. Everybody's getting paid. Everyone's happy. But when a vendor stops payment, then we got to go to the contract to figure out what it says, right? So I've done commercial litigation, which is businesses suing businesses for everything. I've done employment work, which is, any issue that you have internally when you hire people and they allege discrimination or sexual harassment or things of that nature, which from a lawyer's perspective, some of those cases, facts are funny, but they're a little entertaining, but I know they can be bad for businesses. I've done what's called premises liability. So let's say you own a building and someone comes in, whether it's a worker or a vendor or someone making a delivery, and they slip and fall, or an electrician comes in and is working on your wires and electrocutes himself, stuff like that. They always sue the owner because somehow it's your premises, so it's your fault, right? I've also done contract work where contractors and subcontractors get into a beef over something, and they sue each other to try to resolve their differences. So yeah, I mean, I've kind of touched on a little bit of everything, and I've also I've represented lawyers that are sued when things go south as well, because an unhappy client, especially higher net worth individuals, they have the ability to chase the lawyers they're not happy with, and so I've defended those lawyers too.
Really? Wow. Yeah, this is all new. I'm trying to think for our listener who's, probably a very successful entrepreneur or, successful executive looking to level up. I'm trying to think what kind of awesome things could we ask you that would help them? And one is insurance. And this is kind of a special to your industry now. And as a general counsel originally, now litigation, what are some interesting things that you can share publicly that aren't private that go on in the insurance world that we should be more aware of that would help us to make better decisions?
I think one of the biggest things people don't realize is they are in the driver's seat. A lot of people go to a broker and they expect the broker to tell them what they need. And I get that, right? It's easy to do. But the way I always try to explain it is an insurance broker is kind of like a real estate agent. You're kind of aligned, but you're also kind of not aligned, right? They get paid no matter what. And so it's always good to kind of know what you want, tell the person what you want. And so like a lot of people, you can go into a broker and you can say, these are the 3 concerns I have. I want a cyber policy because I deal with data.
Yeah.
I want a commercial liability to protect my property. And I want an employment to protect from sexual harassment and all this kind of stuff. And then here's the different values that I want. And I want you to pitch 10 different companies and bring it back to me, and they'll do that. And then once you have that, you can negotiate those different points. And at the end of the day, the thing I tell everyone is an insurance instrument can literally be written for anything that you want. Someone will create anything that you want. And I've seen some of the craziest endorsements written, and you're like, I didn't know there's insurance for this, but there is. So if you want it, you can find someone that will create it for you, especially for all the people, your audience are very creative individuals. and they have creative fields, they can protect themselves even if they think that it's not out there. It more than likely is.
Hi, this is Melanie McCallan. Josh and I are just so grateful for the many investors who have already joined us at Accountable Equity. Accountable Equity is so much more than a capital group. It's really a community of accredited investors that want to learn and grow together. I just want to personally invite you, if you want to find out more about this type of investment and see if it's right for you and your family, please visit us at accountableequity.com.
Hey, it's Hal Elrod, author of The Miracle Morning, and you're listening to Capital Hacking. Enjoy.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. One of the things that's been surprising to me, we all grew up thinking that LLCs help separate you from your business. And, if somebody slips and falls, you want them to sue your LLC because, of course, you don't want them to try to take your family's house if you run the business. However, this blows my mind. Every single lawyer that you ever get a letter from, they always claim they can sue everything. You know what I mean? Like they can sue every name that they Google that you're associated with. And then I always find that just so confusing. I don't know. This is just, and then honestly, what's interesting too, is you have to make sure all of those names are in a sense associated to your insurance, right? Like you have to put all your DBAs and everything because if they sue the wrong entity, that somehow the insurance might not have to cover you, right? If they choose to sue the wrong company, which they do, because ambulance chasers literally, how fast does an ambulance chaser find out about a car accident? Let's literally talk about top dog type stuff. That lawyer guys, they could basically write that threatening letter / the beginning of a lawsuit in probably a day, right? And the fact finding is hilarious. Sometimes it's like not even pertaining to stuff, but now all of a sudden it's a letter. And maybe it's even the beginning of a lawsuit, and you have to actually send it to insurance. It creates a whole thing. I don't know. What are your thoughts about how those ambulance chasers can create those kinds of letters and how it spins the company into a circle?
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and what's even worse is that if you receive a letter and they demand your insurance information, you have to turn it over. And so before you even know what the lawsuit's about, you have to tell your insurance company, hey, give me my declaration page of coverages. I have to send it to this guy, and I don't even know what happened, right? And that's just the system we're in. Unfortunately, it's garbage. It's very frustrating, especially when you're a business owner and you're just trying to, do your thing and move your company forward. But yeah, most of those letters are standard. And a lot of the times if there's no the first thing I always tell people is find out if there's a requirement to respond, because you don't have to respond to every letter, right? A lot of times they're scare tactics. There are well-known firms in California that use specific individuals that have some sort of disability. They might be blind or they're deaf. And the American Disabilities Act is a nationwide law. And what these individuals do is they go to every Walmart or they use your website. And if it's not compliant, they send you a demand letter, because every violation is like $5,000 in fines. And they say, I went to your website on this date. My blind client couldn't use it. I want $50,000 or I'm going to sue you. And they send out 100 letters a day. You can literally go on the docket and see they file all these lawsuits, like 200 a day. And they're churning and burning. So, if you want to get really esoteric about it, you got to change the system from within. We got to get the right people in office to limit the liabilities and help business owners. But it's unfortunate because no matter what good intention you have, like obviously the ADA was meant to help people that need help. It wasn't intended to pay bad plaintiffs' attorneys. But people will find a way to exploit it, and that's just kind of the way that it goes. But I always tell people, yeah, right, and it's unintended.
That's a great example of total exploitation, and it gets a little less. It's awful because at the end of the day, when you, Mr. and Mrs. entrepreneurs out there building that company, have 5 employees, 10 employees, you really can't withstand too many of those attacks. You're really just covering it, the bills. And you're probably making very little. You remember that old expression? I think you see it on memes and stuff. It says, "Who's willing to quit a 40-hour work week only an entrepreneur is willing to quit a 40-hour work week to have an 80-hour work week with less pay." You know what I mean? So it's crazy to think these small businesses could get hurt by this kind of garbage when they're just trying to do their job and pay people to a living wage. So.
Yeah. Well, and I always, my biggest piece to kind of circle back to your question is, if someone gets the letter, take a deep breath It's scary. It shakes you a little bit. I understand that, but just set it aside. Give yourself 24 hours to think about it. Come back to when your emotions have tapered down, and then think, okay, what's the appropriate thing to do? Who do I need to call? And stuff like that. Because, like anything else, they want you to get emotional and make a bad decision, and just, don't do that.
And what's the typical time for a company's insurance? You said you usually have to notify your insurance that you're being sued or threatened.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the wording of each policy, but normally you have 30 days at least, so you have plenty of time to kind of, like I said, take a deep breath and evaluate.
30 days.
I always tell people, check your own records. Do you have any records of this individual coming on your property or interacting with them or anything? And because sometimes it's just a shakedown. So the more you can arm yourself with it, the more you can call you need to and say, look, this doesn't add up.
Hey guys, it's John Vroman, founder of Front Row Dads, and you're listening to Capital Hacking, the best investment you'll make today.
So, how important is it for people to have an umbrella policy? Because, I've recently gotten one probably within the last 2 years. And how much coverage do you think? Well, I guess that goes in the individually, the person, but tell us about umbrella policies and the importance of it.
Yeah, so an umbrella policy is basically, if you think about layers of insurance, right? I talk with my hands a lot, so I'm gonna use my hands. So you have a primary policy. Let's say you have your homeowner's insurance, right? That is worth X amount of money. Let's say $500,000 of protection. But let's say you have a lot of stuff that's over $500,000 worth. You buy an umbrella policy that goes over that, and the average umbrella policy, is usually a couple million to $5 million or more, depending on people's net worth. What the umbrella policy does is not only does it sit over your homeowner's insurance, but it can sit over other policies as well, depending on how it's worded. So if you have an LLC and you have $1 million of protection, you could probably extend that umbrella policy over both your homeowner's insurance and your LLC as well. And what that does is it just provides that peace of mind that, okay, if let's say Top Dog comes after you and he gets through your $500,000 policy at your homeowners, the umbrella policy provides that $2 million of additional coverage over the $500,000. So that means the insurance money will continue to pay both your attorney's fees if you're defending the case, and then any payout or settlement, and they cannot go after your personal assets, your house, your business, your things like that. So it's just an extra security blanket, if you will.
Yeah, I'll pass it right back. Would you recommend the size of an umbrella policy to someone's net worth?
Oh, that's a good question. I've never actually thought about it as a ratio before. What I always advise people is just make sure that whatever the payout is, it protects what you have, right? So if your net worth of stuff is $5 million, I think it's a no-brainer to pay for $5 million for an umbrella, especially considering umbrellas are, cost for what you get, the protection, are relatively cheap because they know they're usually priced because they know they're not the primary, they're not the first layer. So they take that into consideration. So just be aware that an excess policy and an umbrella policy are two different things. And so you want to make sure you understand those two different things. An excess goes directly over one policy, whereas an umbrella can go over many policies.
The last thing on that is it always makes me think they're just going to sue for a bigger number. Do you know what I mean? If they see you have an umbrella, don't you think it just changes their number up by an extra zero?
Yes, I've definitely seen it. And I also, not to get too technical, but I dabble in this world called reinsurance, which is something separate and apart. But I had an individual produce a reinsurance contract for $10 million. And that is not something that a plaintiff's attorney can get. That's not how it works. And they thought that they could because they didn't understand it. So they made a demand for all the money. And I'm like, well, you don't know how to read insurance policies because this doesn't apply, And I literally had to have like a 40-minute phone call walking him through why this money doesn't exist at his level. And he still didn't believe me, but that's fine. I was like, go for it, man. But there's nothing I can do to convince you.
Meaning sometimes the bigger the coverage, the bigger the request.
That no matter what your policy number is, if it's $1 million or $2 million, they'll probably start out at that demand and then they're just going to work their way down. But you're right. That's the formula, if you will, of what they do. Definitely. But it's usually you do not at the beginning, you don't have to disclose your umbrella policy. Typically it's just your primary that's applicable.
Well, for those listeners, I'm sorry this wasn't all chuckles and pats on the back. But, the biggest thing here you said, Zach, earlier to me was someday this has to change. There has to be, they call it tort reform, but I don't hear it at all anymore in politics. I don't hear it from any side.
Yes.
Nobody cares about this anymore at the politics level, it seems. Us business level, we care about this. But am I wrong? Is there any kind of movement to control frivolous nature lawsuits?
There is not. And from my point of view, the reason for that is the plaintiff's bar is much more organized in funding and lobbying. And I think businesses are more split on what they focus on. They're focused on specific lobbying efforts, but tort reform isn't one of them, right? So it's just a matter of cohesion versus non-cohesion.
Totally.
That's the outcome.
Yeah. No. Well said, buddy. Zach and John, final words here. How can our audience follow up with you, buddy, and learn more from you or watch what you're doing online? How can they follow up?
Yeah. If anybody had any questions, they can reach out to me. It's Zach at darkmatterconsultingllc.com. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that people have. And I appreciate you guys' time today. Really. Cheers, guys.
No, we love you, buddy.
Thanks so much, Zach, man. Really appreciate you, brother. Cheers.
Cheers.
Damn straight. We just got we got to the end of another great show. And everyone listening right now, you're the family and friends. Thanks for staying till the end.
That was so fun. And hey, hit the like, hit subscribe. We're here to serve you guys. That's why we're doing this show. Josh is not paying me. I'm doing this off of my quote unquote sweat equity because we want to make a difference in your life. And then that ripple effect will continue to touch the world.
Hey, amen, brother. Please check us out on capitalhacking.com, all the social media threads. And yes, I know you've probably already sent this episode to one of your best friends. Thank you. We love you. Just go right into your iPhone, hit the plus symbol. We'll talk to you later. See you next week.
Share.